Welcome back, nerds. Fino here. Did you guys buy into the Morgan hype? NP5 on the first banner? Well, you're a bit early to the party, but assuming you haven't bankrupted yourself in the process, you're well positioned to exploit two of FGO's major supports, the literal hype beast Koyanskaya and her trusty friend Oberon. You see, Buster servants have been on the slow side for a while. They were the original farming type, using a Rosh, multiple chargers, a lot of K-scopes, sometimes even waivers Bond CE. But once Scotty and Castoria came out, this kind of playstyle was relegated to poor friends. By the way, worry not, poor friends, I'll have something for you in a couple of days. Take a look at Morgan's skills. Her Charisma of Yearning has a 30% battery, and Protection of the Lake rocks 20% for a combined 50% charge. These skills also have cooldowns shorter than 7 turns, and that's very important because by meeting those two conditions, Morgan qualifies for the Koyanskaya system. Beyond being a source of buster buffs, something Morgan desperately wants anyway, Koyanskaya provides a 50% battery with a twist. Koyan's battery has a 2-turn cooldown reduction tied to it. Combined with another Koyanskaya and the Atlas uniform with its own CDR effect, you can shave 6 turns off Morgan's cooldowns and get another round of buffs and batteries. This combo gives you access to a combined 200% charge, letting you rip through 2 waves worth of enemies. But wait a second, a farming run has 3 waves, doesn't it? I mean, unless you're fighting the 1 million Elizabeth in Ordeal Call, it usually does. That's where our old friend K-Scope comes in. You have K-Scope, right? Max limit broken, level 100? Of course you do. They wouldn't let you into this restaurant if, say, you ran a 0-star scope with Morgan's charge append, or God forbid the abomination we call Cope Scope. Unless you're running Arcade, this cocktail of K-Scope and Koyan is going to be a staple of buster farming, so get used to seeing it. While this has the advantage of occupying a CE slot, losing out on the 6 CE runs that arts teams can do, it has one particular edge over a Castoria setup. Your refund doesn't matter. Consequently, the number of enemies you fight doesn't matter. If you can kill them all in 3 turns, it doesn't matter if they're a 3-3-3, 1-2-1, 2-1-3, Morgan doesn't give a shit. She just throws Roadless Camelot at all of them. 90+ farming nodes often feature strange enemy arrangements like this, so if you can't run a suitably specialized team to min-max your craft essences, or if you're unwilling to grail Chen Gong, then Morgan is a powerful generalist that you can throw at most fights. Koyanskaya compatibility is the big thing that separates her from Arjuna Alter, her big competitor for the AoE Buster Berserker crown. He does more damage if none of Morgan's special buff supply, but this comes with the weakness of A, needing a specific 3rd charger to 3-turn farm, and B, bleeding a massive amount of damage against debuff immune enemies. That second part is pretty rough because, well, if you're not going to farm with the guy, then you want to fight bosses. A substantial number of these are debuff immune, which puts you up shit creek without a paddle. You always have to worry about that minefield with Arjuna Alter. As for that specific 3rd charger, that would be Oberon. If you can get away with not running him, that would be ideal because running that many SSRs eats up a fair bit of your party cost, which is already burdensome with a 5-star main attacker. It also forces you to run one of the plug suits, which precludes running the Atlas uniform. What Oberon contributes is a combined 70% in batteries, a regular NP damage buff, stars, and a massive NP damage amp / buster buff that gives its target an apocalyptic amount of damage potential at the cost of depleting them completely, making them useless for the rest of the fight. Morgan herself can utilize Oberon's help to reach for these sky-high damage numbers, though they won't be as high as Arjuna's with the same setup, at least not without meeting one of Morgan's conditions. Roadless Camelot has 2 separate damage modifiers. There's a fixed 50% buff against enemies that are either Round Table Knights or Fae, the latter category consisting largely of Lost Belt 6 servants. She also has an overcharge effect that gives her NP some extra heft against human attribute enemies. There are 5 attributes in this game, but they don't have the same proportions. The Star attribute is quite rare, while the Beast attribute is extremely rare, so your average enemy is either going to be a human or Earth or Sky attribute. Human attribute servants are the most common ones, while standard enemies tend to feature more Earth and Sky attributes, so Morgan will frequently have access to some kind of bonus damage against some enemy in your encounter. It's just not universal coverage. For your benefit, I'm going to list the 4 enemies that have both the human attribute and the Round Table trait. Saber Alter, Santa Alter, Maid Alter, and Grey. That's it. As of this recording, there are 0 servants that are both human attribute and Fae, so don't worry about that combo. But if you encounter one of the 4 servants I listed and they're the boss of a node, you can leverage Morgan to do a lot of heavy lifting. If Morgan gets just human attribute damage online, she can actually outperform Arjuna, even more so if she gets both of her bonuses going, but I wouldn't count on that. But the point is that you should be mindful of your bonuses because of 90++ nodes. These are the current endgame farming nodes and they're more akin to an old school boss with trash waves. They have messy enemy arrangements and some enemies with extremely high health values. Because of this, you often need to run multiple attackers with multiple charges and a plug suit to make your numbers work. In this team building environment, the ability to spread damage buffs counts for a lot. Morgan actually has some very key ones. Her attack buff is a no-brainer, but Protection of the Lake grants its NP gain component to your entire frontline. If you're incorporating arch attackers like, say, Form 1 Fairy Knight Lancelot against a 3-1-3 arrangement, that could potentially make the difference, especially if you need Morgan to meet the final wave DPS check. Another key benefit is Roadless Camelot's overcharge buff, which persists for 3 turns. Against notes where the AoE component is front-loaded, Morgan can still amp the damage of your final wave's attacker, provided they have something decent that scales with overcharge. These party buffs might not have seemed like they're the biggest deal, unless you're running the Immortal team. I have a video on that, by the way, another ridiculously strong thing Morgan just happens to do. But Morgan's buff suite does matter when you're team building, and this is an area where Arjuna Alter falls woefully short. His effects are almost entirely selfish, except I guess technically the Buster debuff on his NP, but come on, he's looking out for number 1. Mind you, he still does an absurd amount of damage and he can sweep aside most opposition by himself, but if he can't, your secondary attacker doesn't have much to work with. The Arjuna Oberon combo is like a nuclear bomb. Sure, you might want one in your back pocket just in case, but you want options in your toolkit that aren't a nuclear bomb because nukes are inflexible. Morgan is very flexible. You can play her a lot of ways offensively, and you also have a powerful defensive last resort. If Grails are on the table, then Morgan is a strong candidate. Attackers generally are. But Morgan also has the Berserker class base damage modifier, which is 1.1. That's a free 10% on your attack stat. Because of that, if you were to Grail Morgan, you'd be getting quite a bit of mileage. So Morgan, pretty good. Would recommend. Is she a must-roll? Well, I'd say there are a few servants that are even more of a must-roll, something I covered on the Morgan banner video. But since you've probably already rolled for her and watched this for validation, congratulations! You can feel good about your purchase. You backed the right horse, which is more than I can say for the Summer Tomoe fans. Stay tuned for the last major part of my Morgan series, where I answer whether Morgan is really worth rolling for in 121 installments over the course of the next 5 years. That or the Porphyrin Guide. I haven't decided yet. But if you enjoyed this video, check out my Morgan rolls over on Fino and Friends. I ignored my own advice and went in early, so you'll see me get my just desserts. Meet you guys over there.